Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Shadows of the Moon. Episode 4. Chapter 34-45. Raven. Well, first of all, you all acted stupidly. I'll start with that of mine. She shook her head. I get that he doesn't want to share. Then, instead of running away, he should have stayed here and come up with a solution, but he's always been the passive one. Even when they were younger and both he and Kiera wanted something, he'd let her have it. I guess in this situation, he couldn't really just give you up but also didn't want to cause damage, and so he left. I personally think seeing that you two didn't even move on probably just confused him even more, and he now thinks Damon has lost his chance, so has decided he will take what he wants. What irritates me is that you aren't an item. I remember Liam saying, you two can do whatever you want. That's a good point. He did give us a chance in a way. Even if it was in anger and bitterness. Damon, his heart is in the right place, but by playing the lenient passive one he's giving both you and Liam the impression that you aren't that special to him, and I won't deny that his relationship with Robin doesn't help his case. He said to Liam that he'd wait, but what if Liam never changes his mind? Then what? I know Liam is calmer than Elijah, but he is still his father's son. They are possessive and stubborn, they won't budge from their decision. That's true too. Like Liam is fighting for me now, but Damon is still taking the back seat, and that deep down does hurt. Auntie Red was right. I did feel it inside, even though I knew his reason. He's trying to defuse a bigger problem. And you, Raven, just waiting for men who lack brain cells and think with their dicks rather than their minds? This isn't the 15th century. We women take what we want, know what we want, and own it. You can't string them both along without being clear about it. I understand you want it to work, but how? How will it work? It's not only the emotional aspect. Will you give them a day each? Will you all be together? I don't personally see that happening, considering how Liam can't even deal with the fact that you're mated to Damon. But things could change. What is your plan? How were you going to make this work? Her words rang in my mind and I realized how true they were. I kept thinking poor me and feeling sorry for myself. Talking about making it work, but never about how it was going to work. Ugh. I feel so stupid right now. You're right. I never really thought of it. I just wanted everyone to be happy, without even thinking how. This is reality, and as much as two mates sounds hot or great, I don't think we realize that there's so much more to it mentally. We are beings with complex emotions. Ultimately, in a two mates to one woman situation, there will be jealousy and issues throughout. Even if it works out, you have to remember that there will be issues that will pop up and you have to be ready to diffuse them because you are mated to them both. Just because Liam might be acting entitled, it does not mean you should be giving him more. What if when things work out, if they do, he always expects you to be his first? At his beck and call whenever he wants? I didn't even think of that. This was hard. Auntie Red sipped her hot chocolate and was now pacing my room. And what if it doesn't work? Who will you choose? And if you can't choose, ultimately, will you reject them both? You can't let them fight over you, you will have to be the one to make that decision then. We both know they can't be strung along forever. This pack needs its alpha, its beta, and it needs you. I want you all happy, and regardless of what decision you three make, you have to make sure that everyone is treated equally. You cannot favor Liam over Damon even if he is an alpha. Both are men who deserve equal respect and love. If you want it to work with both, then I'm hoping tonight you were planning on having Damon in here. She winked, smirking at me. I blushed, embarrassed. That wasn't the plan. I didn't even realize Liam was here. He snuck in. I protested. She frowned at that. Any amusement she had was gone. Raven, you need to make sure you know what you want and don't let anyone push themselves on you, Liam included. If you have boundaries, make them clear. But also, I think you being uncertain about what you want doesn't help. Take the reins, they are your mates. I understand. Thanks for your insight, Auntie Red. I'm glad you gave me your opinion. It's really given me a different viewpoint on it. That's what I'm here for, she said, with a small smirk. I glanced at her, thinking this was my chance to ask her about something else that had been on my mind. Auntie Red, there's something I wanted to ask. Shoot, she said, sitting down again. Dad said I had a brother, that, how do I say died because of me? Do you know how he died? Sadness washed over her and she looked at me sympathetically. Your parents never liked talking about it, I'm surprised they even told you. She replied, looking out the window. The sun shone on her vibrant red hair, she looked stunning and she seemed to be lost in a memory from long ago. Your brother was 2 years senior to you, but he was extremely ill. He had leukemia, and even his werewolf healing ability wasn't enough to heal him. The doctors advised having another child, that the chances of a sibling being a bone marrow match would be potentially higher. However, his health deteriorated fast, and even when you were born prematurely, she hesitated, looking at me keenly. What else do you know? Nothing, but I would appreciate it if you tell me the full story. Mom and Dad won't ever tell me, I said quietly. Your father. He blamed me for his death, so I think I deserve to know, Auntie. I said softly, hoping she listened. She frowned at that, clenching her jaw. You were not responsible. I thought Haru was delusional at the time due to 2 children on their deathbeds. How can he blame you? She hissed coldly. Please, forget Dad, just tell me the full story. I pleaded. She ran her hand through her hair. You were born at 4 months rather than the usual 6 months. They already said Renji wouldn't make it by then and it caused your mom to go into early labor. When you were born, you were far too weak, and they weren't sure you would make it either. Your father wanted you to get better and stronger, but it was far too early to even consider you for the bone marrow transplant or even check for a match. I can't believe Haru is actually blaming you for his death. She sounded angry and her eyes flashed silver. It doesn't matter. I sighed softly. So, he died because I was too weak to give him the bone marrow he needed. Even then, the chances of him surviving were slim. You can't blame yourself for something that was not in your control. You were blind in one eye as well, what? I asked, surprised. That blue eye of yours, that was Renji's. When he passed away, the doctor offered to transplant it into you. Haru refused, but your mother said it would be a way for Renji to see the world he never had a chance to explore. When you were little, she used to say that you were so adventurous because you wanted to see the world and explore it for both of you. She said, smiling softly. I swallowed hard, the emotions that rushed through me were inexplicable. So I had an eye from my brother and had never been told? To think Mom had agreed. Where was that mom of mine? She seemed so far gone under Dad's opinions. Renji. Where is he buried? I asked. How could you feel sadness for someone you have never met? The children's graveyard down by the blossom trees. She said softly. I nodded. I think it was high time I paid my brother a long overdue visit. Chapter 35 Raven. I pushed open the low white fence that surrounded the graveyard. Not all children were buried here, as some would be buried with their parents, but there were still many graves. It was strange to know that I had a brother that I had never gotten to meet. I looked down at the grass that was sprinkled with daisies and buttercups. Scattered between the small graves were several cherry blossoms. I walked through the graves, scanning the names for my brothers, stopping when I saw a young woman bending over, placing an orchid on each grave. She turned, sensing me watching her, and gave me a small smile. It took me a moment to realize she was the Omega who I had seen in the kitchen the other night. "Sorry," she said, stepping away from the grave. I waved my hand. "Oh, don't apologize. I'm just searching for a grave," I said, giving her a small smile. "Whose?" she asked. "I might know, I visit often." "Oh. Renji Jacobs." She frowned, paused, then turned and pointed to the far side. "It's under that cherry blossom tree," she said. "Thanks, goddess, I didn't even know her name." "Nina," she said, with a smile. "Thanks, Nina," I said before walking through the trees. I stopped and stared at the marble tombstone. I could just about make the name out. It was so small that if I had never been told, I would never have realized that my brother was here. I dropped to my knees, feeling my eyes sting. I felt as if I had been robbed of something. This was my brother, someone who I had a part of inside of me, someone who had died but left me a gift, and I couldn't even spend a moment of my time to thank him or to remember him. I didn't even know of his existence. Some sister I was. I looked at the date on the tombstone. He had barely been 3 years old. I placed my hand on top of the grave. "Hi, I'm Raven, your sister," I whispered, fighting back my tears. I wanted to say so much more. But where do I start? I sniffed, reaching into the pocket of my hoodie and taking out a small octopus plushie. "And this is Sparks," I said, "he's for you." I placed him against the tombstone, near the flower Nina had left. "Where do I start?" "Well, I'm sure you are watching down on us wherever you are, but I still want to tell you about myself." Evening had fallen, my morning at the grave had felt like I had a burden lifted, and I would promise to visit often. I had just rung Damon's doorbell. I had the journal and stuff in my backpack. Even if Liam wasn't going to tell anyone, it wasn't something we could just deny. If Damon had no answers, then we needed to tell someone like Auntie Red. Liam had asked what I had told her, and I had told him she knew about us. He didn't ask me anything further after that, but I could sense his irritation. I knew he had been busy with other stuff today. I wondered if he planned to come to my room tonight, although Auntie Red's words rang in my head. Treat them equally. But I also knew she didn't know about Liam's curse, hence I needed to tell Damon that. I rang the doorbell again, frowning when no one answered. He knew I was coming. "Damon." "Yeah." "I'm at the door." "Oh, sorry. Mom's asleep, I'm coming." Sure enough, the door was pulled open by a very wet Damon, a towel around his waist and water trickling down his body. My heart thudded as my eyes trailed over his body before I blushed, looking away. Sorry, didn't realize you were in the shower," I said, unsure if I should hug him or not. "Oh, who cares?" I hugged Liam shirtless. I moved closer, giving him a quick squeeze around the waist, much to his surprise. His arms wrapped around me, pressing me into his ch3st. My cheeks were burning when I moved back, my stomach fluttering, and he C0CKED a brow. I wasn't expecting that. Why not? I am a very huggy person, I said, closing the door behind me. Damon replied with a smirk. You had something serious to talk about, right? Yes, I replied, sighing. All right, let me go get dressed and I'll be down in 5. Actually, better come on up, you can wait in my room. Okay, I said, following him upstairs. I entered his bedroom, watching him grab some boxers and pants. I turned my back, allowing him to get dressed, my stomach fluttering nervously. All right, all done, he said, coming over to the bed, pulling the duvet up and making some space for me to sit. His room was a mess, I won't deny that. Take a seat, he said, running his fingers through his wet locks. Thanks. Okay, I need you to pay attention, this is serious, I said, unzipping the bag and taking out the book, the notebook, and the card. Taking a deep breath, I told him everything I had learned. 30 minutes later, Damon was frowning. He had asked a few questions, but for the most part, he had listened and schemed through the book towards the end. He now stood there, his emotions a mess. There has to be more, what did Liam say? He asked, concern clear in his powder blue eyes. Liam? He said whatever is meant to be will happen. He seems to have just given in, I said, sighing, placing my head in my hands for a moment. Damon crouched down before me, placing his hands on my knees. He's going to be okay. We aren't going to let anything happen to him, he said firmly, his scent clouding my senses. I looked up at him. Of all the Daimos princes, why Liam? Why someone who was so sweet and giving? Why did he deserve all this? He didn't, but he is probably the one capable of doing this, of ending this curse. Even if he is the darkness, he has good in him. Darkness doesn't mean evil, Damon said, taking my hands in his. I nodded and took a deep breath. I also told Auntie Red about us, I said, feeling a sliver of guilt at what I was about to say next. This morning, she walked into my room when Liam was there. There it was, the flash of pain, but it was gone as quickly as it came. Oh, so how did she take it? He asked with a small smile. She said, I need to know what I want and to not favor one of you over the other, and ultimately, if things don't work, I will have to choose one. I said, feeling my chest squeeze painfully. Well, don't think you need to treat us equally, we both know Liam is going through a lot. Right now, he needs his mate and friend. We need to be there for him, not make him become even more angry and bitter. Damon said. Oh Liam, if you knew how much your friend cared for you. I stood up, feeling even more confident, knowing that I wasn't alone. So, what do we do? The answer lays within, Damon murmured. Within the prophecy or within Liam? I swear we need to rip this thing apart like a Shakespeare play. English was Liam's forte, I grumbled. Damon chuckled. Yeah, well, guess we need to pull our socks up, Damon said. Hey, I did good. Okay, I got a B, I grumbled. You barely passed. That's because I hated reading, I only passed because Liam did my coursework. He grinned and I smiled. Oh, how I missed those days. There is someone who's a pro in literature, Damon said hesitantly. Someone who might see something we didn't. Who? I asked. Robin, she's still studying literature and history, she's smart. I felt a pang of pain, but I nodded. If Damon could be selfless, then why couldn't I? Perfect, then we should ask her. She can be trusted, Right. Yeah. Damon said. He walked over to me and cupped my scanned with cam scanner face, making my heart thunder. This will be nothing more than her helping us. I smiled, looking up at him. Do I even have any right to act so selfish? I asked, smiling softly. Damon smiled back. Of course you do, and I like it. He whispered huskily. I do care for you, Raven. I know. I said, staring into his eyes. His smile faded, his gaze dipping to my L.P.S. He slowly looked back into my eyes as if seeking permission, his heart thudding as fast as mine was. Can I kiss you, gorgeous? He asked quietly. I nodded slowly, and Damon leant down, claiming my L.P.S. in a soft, tender kiss. A wave of tingles rushed through me, the sweet taste of his mouth and the softness of his L.P.S. making my heart race like a galloping horse. I slowly placed my hand on his chest, kissing him back, but before we could deepen the kiss, Dad's voice erupted in my head. How dare you? Where are you? I flinched, pulling away. Hey, are you okay? Damon asked, worried. I nodded. Chapter 36. Raven. Damon and I quickly rushed downstairs, not wanting to disturb Auntie M with Dad's shouting. I pulled open the front door to see Dad standing there, his eyes blazing as he glared at me with such hatred that my heart skipped a beat. Who told you about him? He hissed, advancing towards me. I stepped back, flinching, a vague memory of long ago flitting through my head. Dad had never hit me, had he? Subconsciously, something didn't feel right. He stopped a few feet away, holding out sparks. I said, who told you? He thundered. What the? Calm down. Damon said warningly, placing his hand on my back comfortingly. I'm talking to her. Dad hissed back, shaking sparks in front of me. My breath hitched, my chest aching as I stared at Sparks, a plushie that meant a lot to me. I had made him when I was a child, all by myself, with needle and thread. I had pricked myself 100 times that day, but I wanted a plushie. Dad and Mom didn't want to get me one, so I made Sparks. I remember everyone asking why it was so ugly, but I told them I liked it and I didn't want it to be one of those perfect, pretty teddies you can get from the shop. Since then, I have always picked the most eccentric, oddest plus highs I could find, because they were just like me, lonely, neglected, and alone. Dad was shouting, shaking Sparks wildly as he said something I could no longer hear. My eyes were fixed on Sparks. Please don't hurt it. Mr. Jacobs, calm down. Damon said, his voice quiet, yet a dangerous finality was in it. Oh, did I disturb you both? Dad spat, taking in Damon's shirtless torso. This isn't what it looks like. Damon said curtly. I'm sure it isn't. She's always had a habit of playing people. Dad said hurtfully. I wish I'd stop being so quiet, but I knew if I opened my mouth, I would end up saying everything and anything that came to mind. Perhaps that is what I needed to do. But I wouldn't do that when Auntie M was sleeping upstairs. I felt the hair at the back of my neck prickle, almost as if someone was watching me from inside the house. I turned back, staring over my shoulder into the dark hallway. But there was no one there. Shaking my head, I turned back to Dad and Damon. Stay out of this, Damon. This is between me and her. Let's go. Dad hissed now, trying to grab my arm. No, if you want to say something to me, you can say it right here. I said, trying to grab Sparks. He stared at me hatefully, his claws digging into Sparks. Don't cry, Raven. You had no right to visit him. What did you think? That you could go there and cast your shadow of darkness upon him? Don't you get that you are nothing but an omen? Dad spat. Mr. Jacobs, stop it. Damon growled, now moving protectively in front of me. I told you to step aside. Dad growled, trying to push Damon aside. Dad, stop it. I warned quietly, my eyes fixed on Sparks. His claws were already tearing through it. I felt as if a part of my soul was being stabbed and shredded. You know, there are already several questionable things on your head. Mr. Jacobs, the Alpha wishes to see you. Now. Damon growled venomously. So, you will protect the whore? Dad hissed. That's it, I'm done being nice. Damon growled, grabbing Dad by his cuff and glaring at him. Yes, I'll protect Raven, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't call her that. I'll accompany you to the Alpha. Do as you want. Raven. If you visit there again, I swear I will disown you and have Renji moved. You don't deserve to speak to him or see him. You should have been the one to be lying there, not him. I don't know why Selene didn't do just that. His words rang through the mind link. With every word, I felt a stab of pain through me, but I remained silent, fighting back the tears that I refused to let fall. My face remained stoic and indifferent. Damon looked at me concerned, but I simply gave him a small nod, telling him I was fine. Sparks' head suddenly rolled to the ground before Dad's claws ripped his body apart. I hate you. I know. I replied emotionlessly. I'll be back. Damon growled, dragging Dad away. I didn't reply, staring at Sparks' remnants. Flashback earlier at the grave. And then Kia and I hid away. When Liam and Damon came out in their teeny, little shorts, and started looking for their clothes, well, let's just say they never found them. I laughed, resting my weight back on my hands as I crossed my stretched legs at the ankles and smiled at the grave. You know, if you were here, you would have made a great addition to our little group. We could have had just one more person to tease. Boys are so much fun to tease. I said, smiling down at the grave. Anyway, Renji. I want to apologize for not visiting before. I'm sorry that I've been a horrible sister and, you know. I want to thank you for the gift of sight. For this Do you know what I'm super lucky about? That despite it all, there is a part of you beside me forever. No matter how long Dad kept me from you, he could never keep you away fully because even though I didn't know, you were always by my side. I looked at the grave, my heart clenching painfully. I didn't know it was possible, but I felt such strong emotions for someone I never even knew existed. Lastly, I am sorry I spent the last 3 hours boring you with my silly stories. But don't worry, I'm going to go for now, give you a break, but I'll be back another day to tell you about my life at Auntie A's pack. In my absence, Sparks will keep you company. He doesn't talk as much as I do, but he's great. As long as he's by your side, you won't feel alone, Renji. I love you. I stared down at the grave, a few tears escaping my eyes. Wasn't I worth anything? Is that why I was never told about my brother? He was easy to talk to, I felt at peace here. I wish he hadn't had to die, I wish we could have grown up as brother and sister. I wish I had been strong enough to give him my bone marrow. But we often wish for things that will never be. Wishing will never get us what we want. We just learn to live with life as it is. I stood up, waving at the grave before I walked away, my heart aching painfully. and I fell to my knees by Sparks' remains, picking up his head. What had I done to be hated so much? I needed to talk to my parents, just once, to put my feelings on the table and then end it with them. I was done with this toxic relationship. I had no time for fake relationships anymore. As for Renji, I would find a picture of him and I would keep him close. I didn't need to go to the graveyard to be close to him. Gathering up the wool and the bits of remains left of Sparks, I walked back inside, feeling down. I was about to head upstairs when I heard the back door shut quietly in the kitchen. My head snapped towards the sound and I calmed my heartbeat, slowly making my way down the hall and towards the kitchen. Trying to catch a scent, but there was nothing out of the ordinary here. Had I imagined it? Silently, I padded towards the kitchen and entered. Darkness bathed the entire room, but my eyes snapped to the back door. It was shut and nothing seemed out of place. How strange! I was about to turn away when I saw the string of the blinds on the back door moving ever so slightly, a clear signal that I hadn't imagined I had heard it. I rushed to the door, yanking it open and frowning. It was unlocked. I scanned the area outside, my heart pounding, but everything looked to be in place. Slowly, I closed the door and locked it, staring around the kitchen. Someone had been here regardless of the fact that there wasn't a scent. There were certain sprays and things to disguise a scent, but who was it? I was about to leave the kitchen when my stomach plummeted with dread. Was it the killer? If so, why were they? My thoughts died and my eyes went to the ceiling, my heart thumping. I ran from the kitchen straight up the stairs, fear consuming me as I rushed to Auntie Monica's room. Please be okay. Chapter 37. Damon let go of me, Nicholson. Raven's dad hissed. Yeah, I don't think so. Not when he gave that to Raven. I had mind-linked Liam, who told me to bring him in, he needed this. Entering the headquarters, I dragged the growling and shouting Haru Jacobs to the room Liam was waiting at. I don't think addressing him as Mr. Jacobs feels right anymore, especially after all the st he's clearly given Raven. If I were you, I'd stay quiet. I'm sure your reputation matters, and if you continue like this, the entire pack will know you're here. I growled icily, pushing open the door. Liam was sitting on one of the two chairs, his legs up on the table, crossed at the ankles, playing with a small knife in his hand. He looked at us, his glare on Raven's dad with a glint in his cold blue eyes. Nice of you to drop by, do take a seat. He said with a cold mocking smirk. I wish to speak to Alpha Elijah. I am not going to let two boys make a mockery of me. Jacobs GRE. Liam's eyes flashed, and he motioned for me to put him in the chair. I shoved him into the seat, trying my best to remain calm. The way he made Raven feel, although she hid it well, it was not fair. The thing is, Haru, I'm the alpha, not dad. So, before you try to act like an entitled dip st, show respect. Liam growled, suddenly flicking the knife across the table. My eyes widened and Mr. Jacobs froze. The knife whizzed past his face, slicing his cheek in the process. He gasped. I saw the few strands of hair that fell to the ground before the knife impaled the far wall. I missed. So anyway, to what do I owe the pleasure? Liam remarked mockingly. We all knew he missed on purpose. Sometimes I swear I didn't recognize the man he had become. Will you grab my knife? His voice came through the link, making me nod and go and grab it, frowning at how deeply it was lodged into the wall. I returned to the table and placed it down on the table. Our eyes met and I saw him frown slightly. He knew Raven had been with me, and I suddenly remembered RKSS. Goddess that K.S.S., it was sweet, innocent, and beautiful just like Raven. My heart skipped a beat when Liam looked at me, almost as if he knew what we had done. He took the knife and looked away, sneering. He scoffed and shook his head, as if he wasn't surprised. Did he know? I hope not. SHT, this was messed up. We shouldn't have to hide, I told her to pursue Liam. I needed to keep control of my emotions. He turned back to Mr. Jacobs, who I hoped knew that Liam was not someone to mess with. How about we start from the top? Liam said coldly. Reaching into his pocket, he took out his phone and after unlocking it, scrolled through the messages before he held up the phone, showing the texts he had sent Raven years ago. Did you have anything to do with these not getting to Raven? Liam asked calmly. My eyes snapped to Mr. Jacobs, who swallowed, his heart racing ever so slightly. Giving us the answer. Why? I asked quietly. I haven't seen those messages before. He denied, his face pale. Lie. Liam said coldly, flipping his leg onto the floor and spinning the knife in his fingers. So, you stopped both Damon and I from seeing her on the excuse that she didn't want to see us, when she had no clue that we even came. You deleted my messages too. You knew I was her mate. I didn't he? Despite the fear that was coursing through him, Jacobs growled. Are you going to confess all your crimes or shall I put you under Alpha Command? Liam asked coldly. I have done nothing wrong. I don't think Alpha Command would even work. If he doesn't truly believe he has done wrong, perhaps you need to ask him question by question. I said frowning. This was a side of Haru Jacobs I had never seen before. The hatred and anger on his face were as if I had never known the true person, just a mask put forward to hide his reality. Alright, let's do this. Every time you annoyed off you will get a little punishment. I just wish I had a bigger knife though. Liam remarked, now standing up and walking around Jacob's chair. Why did you delete the texts? He growled, his Alpha Command clear in the air. The surge of power made me step back as I stared at my Alpha, someone I still considered my best friend. Jacobs gripped the arm of his chair, his knuckles turning white as he fought Liam's Alpha Command. Liam slammed his hand on the table and Jacobs flinched. She doesn't deserve happiness. Okay. He growled through gritted teeth. It was almost as if we were in sync. Both mine and Liam's eyes flashed, letting out menacing growls. I grabbed his throat and Liam slammed his knife into his hand. We glanced at each other before I shoved Jacobs back roughly into his seat and stepped back, clenching my jaw. Raven deserves happiness. I said icily. She does, and clearly you've ruined a lot for her. Care to share why she doesn't deserve happiness? Liam asked, coldly grabbing him by his hair and yanking his head back. Because she's the reason I don't have my son with me. From the start, she was a failure. Jacobs shouted, the hatred and anger in his eyes so clear that it actually shocked me. How hadn't we ever seen it? An answer I knew, even when my wolf whimpered inside. Raven hid it all, she always smiled and acted normal. Back when we were young, even when it came to going home at the end of a long day, she used to delay it. Why had we never seen the signs? A scream of pain made me look towards the table where Liam had shoved the knife into his hand once again. First of all, your son died as a kid. Liam hissed. Wait, son? Both Jacob's and Liam's words resonated in my head. I never knew Raven had a sibling. We only produced her for her bone marrow. And even then, she failed. He shouted. Oh yeah? Well, guess what, you're not God. Liam shot back, punching him across the face, snapping his head to the right as blood squirting everywhere. The chances for your son to survive were slim. Raven had nothing to do with that. If you want to blame someone, then maybe you should look to yourself. Why were your pups born with illnesses or lacking something? If you ask me, the fault was in you. She deserved it all. The hatred, the contempt. You all should be happy that I didn't dump her in a river somewhere. Liam slammed his head into the table, his anger blazing around him, his eyes darkening strangely more than normal. Mr. Jacobs, I began, wanting to ask a question that was bothering me. I crouched down, staring up into his face. Have you always treated Raven like this? Did you abuse her like this as a child or just when she grew up? My stomach twisted when he sneered coldly. I have always treated her, exactly the way she deserved to be treated. Chapter 38. Liam. My eyes blazed as those words left his mouth. I grabbed his hair, slamming his head into the table. How could she not have mentioned it? Didn't she even think to tell us? Clearly, we weren't real friends. But I can't go blame her when I should have picked up the signs. Have you hurt her physically? I asked dangerously. Answer me. And if I have? He spat. The anger that was blazing through me suddenly snapped inside of me, reveling out of my control. All I could see was the darkness closing around us and Haru's face, it twisted in contempt for my mate, looming before me. Liam, don't! Someone was shouting, but it didn't matter, all I wanted was to kill the man before me. Was that the smell of blood? Who was screaming? I felt a jarring pain in my back and I was slammed to the ground. Someone was trying to pin me down. I glared up at the man who was on top of me and it took me a few moments to realize it was Damon. Another flare of anger and hatred rushed through me, but the look of concern on his face made me falter. Why was he worried? Kill him and get back to punishing Raven's dad. I tried to push him off, but he refused to let go. What I hated most about Damon was that he was strong, and he knew how I fought. Apart from my extra training at the Alpha training, he was the one who would always spar with me. Liam, listen to me. Raven wouldn't want this. For her. Calm down, man, think about Raven. I shoved him off with one push. This time I succeeded and he slammed into the far wall. I stood up, searching for Jacobs, but all I saw was a body with several deep wounds and a slowing heartbeat lying on the ground. One of his arms lay a few feet away. I looked down at my own hands, which were covered with blood. I looked at Damon who was now standing up, a concerned look on his face. Something I didn't want to see. He had a few slashes across his **st, and a heavily bleeding wound on his HP. Should I get someone to come see him and throw him in the cells? He asked as if he hadn't just seen me lose self-control. Yet, I said coldly. I walked over to the man, grabbing him by his collar. That's what happens when you hurt anything that is mine. I hissed, slamming his head into the ground. I didn't really give a if he's dead. I knew Damon was mind-linking someone. I heard the sound of running footsteps and soon 3 men came in to handle. Get him fixed up, chuck the arm in the bin and throw him in the cells. I growled. Alpha. The arm can be reattached. One of the men dared question. Oh yeah? I asked, menacingly going towards him. I know that our fast regeneration means we can replace limbs, but if I say bin it means bin it, he flinched, before bowing his head to me. Yes, Alpha. He said. Liam, Damon murmured. I glared coldly at him. Something told me he knew about the curse. He was acting way too calm when I had just lost my st. But before I could even reply, Raven's voice came through the link. Liam, Damon, I think someone was here in the house. Auntie is okay, but I heard something. Both me and Damon glanced at each other before we ran for the door. We got to the Nicholson house in under 3 minutes, rushing inside to see Raven pacing the hallway. She turned about to speak when she looked at both of us, her heart thundering when she saw Damon's injuries. A pang of jealousy and anger flitted through me. Did you two fight? She asked, looking hurt. No, we both said in unison. We looked at each other and Raven smiled slightly. Most of this blood is your dad's. Damon said quietly. She frowned but said nothing, looking between us again before she walked over, bunching her sleeve in her hand and wiping the blood off my face. Worry clear in those unique eyes of her. It calmed me, knowing she came to me first. She erased my jaw for a moment, sending off those rivets of sparks before she moved away, staring at Damon's HP, the only injury that hadn't healed. You need to be careful. She scolded, examining the wound, brushing her hand along his waist just above the injury. This needs to be bandaged. I'm surprised he didn't just tell her I did that. You said you heard something. I asked, trying not to pay attention to her legs that peeked out from under her oversized top. Her over-the-knee boots covered most of them up, but did she look good even when she covered those curves of hers? I did. It was weird. She murmured, staring towards the kitchen. Look, you two should go shower and get dressed. How about I make hot drinks and then we'll talk about everything? Sounds good. Damon said, then turned to me. I'll give you some clothes. I frowned but nodded and we both headed upstairs. Stairs that I remember climbing so many times growing up. I don't even get why he still considered me a friend. I mean, sure, when his dad died I was here, but once went down with Raven, I left them. Dreading, afraid and waiting for the day I'd get the call or something telling me they had made it and marked one another. Damon tossed me a clean shirt and sweatpants before motioning for me to use the bathroom on the first floor. He himself grabbed his clothes and made his way down the stairs. I frowned before taking a quick shower. I didn't want any favors from him, but if Raven wanted us to try to get on, I was going to. I won't lie, the fact that I may only have a few months to live kind of threw me off. My insistence that Raven should be mine didn't seem strong anymore. What if the curse was not broken and I did die? Then what would happen with her? I mean, a part of me wanted to just ask her to be mine for the next few months and shower her with all the love I could, but that was just selfish. That would break her even more once I was gone. I knew she had told Damon. If I had any doubts, seeing the book on his bed had been enough proof of that. I walked down the stairs, only to see Damon standing in the kitchen, his top lifted up and Raven bandaging his HP. She had changed her top, which had gotten blood on it thanks to wiping my face earlier. She was now wearing something that probably belonged to Auntie Monica. It was a plain lilac top. She was gorgeous. The top went well with her tiny shorts, which stuck to her so perfectly. Just looking at her made that same anger flared through me at the sight of them as I walked into the kitchen, where 3 mugs of hot chocolate stood on the table. I clenched my jaw, watching Raven pat the bandage gently. There. Honestly, you should be careful. She scolded. I hated how she could be close to him without even her getting all nervous, and then when I'm around her. I looked away, feeling my anger rising, and took a seat. I'm glad you're not injured, she said, placing her hand on my shoulder. Our eyes met, and I frowned, looking away. What did you hear? I asked coldly, tensing when she ran her hand through my wee.t locks before taking the seat next to me. I was about to head upstairs with Sparks. Me and Damon looked at her questioningly, and she sighed, pointing to a torn-up teddy. Sparks, I frowned, I renumbered him. I remember that ugly thing. Didn't you get the wool from a cushion Mom was going to chuck out? I asked. Her eyes snapped to mine, her heart thudding, and I saw the glitter of what looked a lot like tears in them. She pressed her L.P.S. together and nodded with a small, shaky smile. Yeah, that's where I got it from. She whispered. I always noticed you, Raven. I just wish I had noticed there was so much more going on. She looked away, as if just realizing where we were. She placed one mug in front of Damon, who sat across from us, before placing the other two in front of me and her. I was heading up and that's when I heard the door shut ever so quietly. That back door always made that slight crunching sound where it scuffed the tiles, so I knew it was the back door, but when I came in here, there was no one here. I looked around sharply, a sudden chilling thought coming to me just as Raven was about to take a sip. I placed my hand over the top of the mug, stopping her L.P.S. meeting my hand instead. Don't drink anything. From the autopsies, we found that the poison that she downed the body is first administered. If someone was here, for all we know, it could have been the killer. Chapter 39. Raven, let's have a look around just in case. Liam said quietly. The moment he took my mug off me, all three of us stood up. Damon scanned the kitchen before looking at the back door. How did they even get in? He murmured more to himself than us. The door was unlocked. I said, scanning the ground to see if there were any footprints or anything. The door was definitely locked. I always check and hide the keys so Mama doesn't wander out. You check the kitchen, see if anything looks out of place. Although you are so messy, I doubt you'll even realize if anything is out of place. Liam remarked. I cleaned the kitchen today. Damon almost sounded like he was complaining. Hard to believe. Liam replied, looking around the fairly clean kitchen. I'll take a look outside. It was almost like old times with their friendly banter. I just hoped that this could become permanent. How is the drug administered? Damon asked. Did Esteban say? Nah, he said it could be in any way. The thing is, even if it's injected or taken orally, we wouldn't know as we heal pretty fast. Before the organs start shutting down, whatever way it's administered would be healed over. So it depends. If it was the killer, they would choose something that I was cut off when Damon swore. Wait. For anyone to get in without a break-in, means there has to be a copy of a key, right? He murmured as if a sudden thought had come to him. I'll be right back. Liam frowned as Damon rushed into the hall, pulling on some sneakers before leaving the house quickly. Liam and I exchanged looks. Guess someone else had a key too. Liam remarked, turning his back as he opened one of the cupboards. Robin. Wow. Don't go there, Raven. But I couldn't deny that it really hurt to know that they had been so close. Maybe it was to keep an eye on Auntie M. It wasn't like I was here, neither as a mate nor as a friend. Liam left for a bit to search the back garden, but he came back frowning nothing. I said, looking around the kitchen for anything out of the ordinary. Nothing. So far, those who have been killed were not warriors. Either omegas or just standard wolves. If that was the case here, then maybe if it is the killer, they would have only targeted Auntie Monica. I wonder if there is anything here specifically that only she uses, Liam murmured, crouching down as he looked around, his eyes glowing. No scent too, A spray or something?" I asked. He shrugged, standing up and scanning the kitchen. I continued looking in the food containers, sniffing for anything odd. "What happened with Dad?" I asked. His piercing eyes turned to me, and he frowned. "How long has he been treating you like that?" he asked me, his eyes darkening with anger, only making his scar stand out more. Maybe I shouldn't have asked. He walked towards me and my heart skipped a beat. "Like what?" "Don't play dumb, love," he warned. I moved back, cursing inwardly when I hit the worktop. He leant down, placing his hands on either side of the worktop. "I'll ask you again. How long has he been abusive towards you?" I looked up at him. I couldn't lie when he knew the truth, or some of it. "He's always been weird towards me, but it's okay. I'm fine. It's not like stop with your I'm okay crap all the time, Raven. You always want to help others out, but what about yourself?" I was planning on having a final word with them. "But Liam, right now we need to see if someone was actually here," I whispered, placing my hand on his bare chest. That intense spark rushed through me, and my heart thundered under his gaze. "When you have that word, I'm going to be by your side. Your father will be punished for his crimes, and I'm not going to drop this nor cut him any slack," he growled. "Okay," I replied softly, thinking nope, I will face them alone. Reaching up, I brushed his hair back. His hands went to my PS and he pulled me against him. In my heels, the top of my head reached just above his shoulder. "Still tiny," I frowned. Maybe I needed to keep a stool close by so I could look him straight in the eyes and not feel so small. Our eyes met and I couldn't deny that intense chemistry that was present between us. My entire body yielded to his touch, wanting so much more. "So you told Damon about the book?" he asked quietly. I nodded, trying to ignore how good his body felt. "He's your friend, and if you want to give up and act stubborn without even finding a solution, then you have us to help you," I stated with a glare. "And don't tell me I was wrong to do so." I was about to tug away when he yanked me back into him, making me gasp when our bodies slammed together, sending off rivets of pleasure. I almost M0ANED, feeling him throb, my own core clenching. I tensed in his hold, not trusting myself. "What's wrong, love? You don't seem to get so nervous when you're around Damon," he whispered seductively, yet I didn't miss the flash of anger in his eyes. My heart thundered, and I gasped when he suddenly lifted me up, placing me on the worktop, forcing my legs apart so he could stand between them. "Goddess!" My stomach fluttered with butterflies. His hands went to the back of me and he pressed me against him, making me gasp, grabbing hold of his shoulders. "Why don't you get the difference between you and Damon? When I'm around you, I feel giddy and nervous. My heart feels all funny and I can't think straight." But I couldn't say that out loud. "Because you make me crazy," I whispered quietly. His scent was filling my nose and my core throbbed at our position. A smirk crossed his PS, and his gaze dipped to my own. "I like crazy," he murmured, lowering his head slightly. "You're fun to play, darling. Have I ever told you that it's a turn on when you get all flustered?" he whispered, making my breath hitch. "Oh goddess, don't make me into a pile of mush." His PS met my neck and I gasped, a soft M0AN escaping me when he sucked on my skin gently, sending explosive sparks rushing through me. His hand ran down my back and no matter how much I tried to focus, I couldn't. My mind was going blank, all I could think about was him. "Liam," I whispered, running my fingers through his hair. Suddenly, the answer to why I always stopped or pushed him away hit me like a ton of bricks. With Liam, I felt like I lost control. My body yearned for nothing more but to melt into his touch. The way he pushed my boundaries. I knew all he needed to do was push me hard enough and I wouldn't be able to resist this intense desire that ate me up inside every time he was in the same room with me. He consumed me completely. He placed a second KSS just beneath my ear before moving away with a smirk on his face. I wasn't able to respond, my heart thundering at the thought that had just crossed my mind. Should we get back to looking? He mocked softly. Or do you want me to continue? And no, we should carry on. I said, feeling my cheeks burn. Sounds good. He smirked, leaning in. Liam, I meant looking. I said, glaring at him despite the blush on my cheeks. He chuckled, and for a moment, I remembered the old Liam. Somewhere deep down, he was still there. I found myself giggling weakly too. Let's find answers. I mumbled, trying to get down, only for Liam to lift me off and place me on the ground. Our eyes met and his brows furrowed. I'll be waiting for the full story on your old man soon enough. He said quietly, and he's going to pay. His eyes burned with anger, yet when he leant down to place a soft KSS on my LPS, his touch was tender, leaving me a mess of nerves. Chapter 40 Damon I left the house, mind-linking Robin to ask where she was. At the pack house, is everything okay, Damon? She sounded worried and I felt a little bad. I had totally shut her out since Raven got back and I ended things. Yet, what I did wasn't right, but Robin was the one who got hurt in this equation, along with Raven. Yeah, all's good, I just need to ask you something. I asked, breaking into a run. She had a key to our house. Back when she used to house sit and watch Mom, I gave her both the front and back door. I just needed to make sure she still had them, or ask if she had come around today, although I doubted that. Okay. She sounded hesitant. I entered the pack house, going straight up to Robin's room. I knocked on it lightly and she opened it pretty quickly. I guess she was watching out the window. What is it? She asked, crossing her arms. I didn't miss the fact that she was wearing a fluffy gown over her pajamas, which usually are pretty skimpy. I liked how Robin was taking all this and the respect she was showing Raven, although it just made me feel worse. She had told me she loved me, but I hadn't said those words back to her. I knew she felt it, but I had my reasons that I could never return her love. Damon. I blinked and nodded. Sorry. It's just. You still have the keys to my place, right? Her eyes widened before she nodded. I'm sorry, I didn't realize, I totally forgot. Hey, it's okay, I said, seeing the panic on her face. She nodded, forcing a fake smile before she rushed to her drawer and began rummaging in it. I'll give it to you right now. Robin. Relax, I'm only asking because Raven thought she heard the back door and it was unlocked. She looked at me, and I didn't miss the flicker of sadness in her dark eyes at the mention of Raven. This was my fault. Oh, no, I haven't visited again. I only see Monica on her walks. I haven't been to yours and I swear I wouldn't have gone without your permission. She rambled. I walked over to her, placing my hands on her shoulder. Hey, it's cool. I'm not accusing you, I'm just wondering if maybe you did or if someone else was there or something. I said softly. Oh, okay. She said, shrugging my hands off her and turning back to the drawer. It was in here, with the SpongeBob keyring. I frowned. Had someone stolen it? But just when I thought she wouldn't find it, she pulled it out with a smile that lit up her face. Told you. Here. I no longer have anything that belongs to you. She said softly as I took them from her. Her heart was thudding, although I wanted to give her a hug, I knew I couldn't. I'm sorry, Robin, for being. I don't regret the time we had together, even though it was just a distraction for you. I'm just sorry that you got involved when you had a mate. Now goodbye, Damon, leave. She turned her back to me and I nodded. She was a brave one. Although she was 19, she was so mature. There's one more thing. There's something that I need your help with, and there's no one else I can really ask. We just need a little insight into what a text might mean. I said hesitantly. First of all, make up your mind. Is it I or we? She asked, now turning back towards me with a frown on her pretty face. I forgot how feisty she could get if you crossed her. I ran a hand down my face. We, Raven and I. Does she know you're asking for my help? Yeah, we just want your intake on it. Fine, then just pass her whatever you need help with. She lives here at the pack house. I'd rather talk to her than you. She replied in a clipped manner. I smiled slightly. Thanks. She didn't reply. I left the room, staring down at the keys in my hand. Do I give the keyring back? Deciding against it, I headed back home slowly. If Robin still had her key, then who could it have been? Had Raven imagined it? I unlocked the front door, and saw both Liam and Raven still looking around the kitchen. Raven glanced at me when I walked into the kitchen, but Liam, who had just taken out Mom's pillbox, was frowning thoughtfully. He opened it up, looking down at the pills. Does anything look different in here? He asked, holding it out to me. I walked over and looked inside. They all look fine. I said, shaking my head. Still, take them to get checked, we can't risk it. Liam said, frowning. Maybe I did imagine it. Raven murmured, looking worried. Maybe there was nothing here, but I swear I felt watched at one point. I doubt that you imagined it. If you heard the door, someone was here. Maybe it wasn't the killer, but we can't really take chances. Liam said, frowning. Opening the back door, he stepped outside, scanning the garden once more. I agree, we can't take chances. I added, sighing. I think we should get cameras installed within the pack grounds too. Liam muttered, running a hand through his hair before he turned back to me. Assign guards to watch this house. You're often not around, Aunt Monica can't be left alone. I nodded as Liam stepped inside again, locking the door. Get the locks changed too. I will. It's nice to see you care. I said with a smirk. He raised his brow, his scar catching my attention. I care for Aunt Monica, don't get the wrong idea. He growled. Nah, you still love me deep down, bro. Raven smiled as she watched us, and I couldn't resist smiling too. Things were looking a little better. Once again, we became serious. We were no closer to knowing who could be behind this than we were an hour ago. I'm going to go grab my stuff. Raven said, leaving the room, leaving Liam and me alone. Suddenly, the kitchen seemed a tad too small for both of us. She told you about the curse, right? I hope you're not pitying me right now because I don't need that. He said coldly. Nothing to pity, because we will get to the bottom of it and break it. I said, shrugging. Delusional. You should be happy though, right? I mean, if I die. Raven's all yours. My eyes flashed and it took all of my self-control not to punch him across that god face of his to knock some sense into him. The fact you think I'd even think that. I guess you really have forgotten what kind of person I am. You know I'd die for you if I had to. I said quietly. Yet you can't reject her for me. I felt a sharp stab of pain, staring at him. Would rejecting Raven help him? Because I would do anything for him, I wish he'd see that. Thought not. He said, smirking coldly before walking out of the kitchen, his aura rolling off him. It was different, I could feel the darkness swirling around him this time. Raven paused on the bottom step, looking between us as she clutched her bag. Shall we? Or do you wish to stay, darling? Liam said coldly. I knew Raven could sense the change too. Coming, she said, giving me a smile. Good night, Damon. Night, guys. I replied. The door shut behind them, but that question lingered in my head. Would rejecting Raven be the answer to us? Chapter 41. Raven. We reached the pack house and Liam was quiet, but I could tell he was mind-linking from the way he nodded once or twice. I had a pretty good idea that he was discussing security or something. We entered the pack house and Liam went into the kitchen. I headed upstairs, wanting a shower and to actually just get a good night's sleep. The lingering thought that time was running out for Liam niggled at the back of my mind. How did we break this curse? How would we know the curse was broken? We needed to do this ourselves. I would get to the bottom of this. The boys can work on finding the killer, and I will work on this. Damon, I called through the link. Yes, gorgeous. Did you ask Robin? I did, she said you can show her since you're at the pack house. I don't think she wants anything to do with me as much as I feel a little bad for you. I like her yet, yes I replied. She was there for you when I wasn't. Night night, Damon. Night gorgeous I smiled, cutting the link. I grabbed some clothes and my toiletries, then went to have a shower. Mulling over everything once again, I had felt someone watching me when Dad was there, but when I had looked back, no one was there. It couldn't have been Auntie Monica because I would have heard her come down or go up. It was down the hall towards the kitchen. The bathroom was steaming up and the warm water was soothing, making me drowsy as I pondered over everything. I had just shampooed my hair, massaging my scalp slowly, when suddenly, the water became scalding hot. A scream escaped my lips as the water seared my skin and I jerked away from the downpour, but it was a full overhead shower not giving me much space to escape. The shampoo stung my eyes as I frantically felt for the sliding door, tumbling out of the burning shower, catching my foot on the edge and tumbling to the floor, just as the bathroom door was ripped off its hinges. Raven. Liam's voice came. I quickly crossed my legs and arms over my chest. It felt as if my entire body was on fire, especially my left side. What the? I heard him mutter before I felt a jug of cold water being tossed over me. I gasped, welcoming the soothing coolness. Raven. Raven baby, look at me. Liam's worried voice came. Before a towel wiped my face gently I opened my eyes, grateful for the towel he threw around my shoulders. Worry was clear in his magnetic blue eyes. I'm okay. The water just turned extremely hot. I said, looking down at my leg. My skin was already very red, but I could see it was healing already. Liam frowned, staring at the water, helping me to my feet. I turned and saw a few of the other young men and women who lived here at the door, watching curiously. Are you okay, Raven? One of them asked. I nodded. Owen stood there. I glared at him when I saw him smirking and looking me over. I looked down, glad that the towel was covering the important bits, but I still felt bare. "Get out of here!" Liam growled, and they all scattered. "I'm okay. I need to wash my hair," I said, feeling a little dazed. Liam nodded, placing his hand under the water. "It's okay again. Maybe there's a fault with the boiler, I'll have it sorted," he muttered. I'll just wash my hair in the sink," I mumbled, feeling a little shocked still. Liam nodded as I wrapped the towel tightly around me. "You broke the door," I said, staring at the door that lay flat on the ground. "You screamed," he countered, unmasked worry on his face. "That scared me." "I'm sorry," I said, turning the cold tap on. "You can leave." But to my surprise, he picked up the jug and began filling it with water. "Liam, I'm fine," I protested, feeling bare. "I can hold a jug." "I didn't say you couldn't." With that, he gently pushed my head down in the sink and began pouring the water over my head, his fingers running through my hair as he washed the shampoo out. My heart was racing, and my stomach fluttered at the sweet gesture. I didn't say anything, clutching my towel, glad it fell to mid-th. Closing my eyes, I gave in, enjoying the feel of his fingers running through my hair. "You do know the water's colored?" I laughed. "Obviously, vibrant hair dyes always wash out," I said. "Yeah, I remember giving Mom a white towel once after she'd showered," she got annoyed. "I actually never knew her hair wasn't naturally red until I was like 10. "Really?" I said when he finally turned the tap off and rubbed a towel in my hair. I slowly stood up straight, my heart pounding as I stared up at him. "Yeah, she's always had red," he said, tossing the towel aside. "So how did you find out?" I asked, not missing the way his eyes trailed over my collarbones and cleavage. I asked who my hair took after. He shrugged. I smiled. "You really were too innocent," I said, reaching up and pulling his cheek. "That hurt," he growled, lunging at me. I giggled, ducking under his arm and darting to my clothes. "Get my toiletries, please." I got a few curious looks as I made my way to my room. "Whoring around with the alpha, hey?" Owen's voice flitted into my head. I looked around, seeing him standing down the hall. "Remember, I'm your trainer," I growled back, my eyes flashing. "And I don't think Liam will appreciate your crap." Whatever, he turned and walked off. I entered my bedroom, closing the door and pulling on my Brazilian briefs. I slipped on an oversized black nightshirt and went to blow dry my hair, remembering Dulsanra's magic. How lucky was Rayhan's kitty to have magic. I know our kind were still not fully accepting of magic, but things were looking up since the treaty had been signed between both species. And I, for one, think it's totally bad. A knock on the door made me look up, turning the hairdryer off. "Enter." I knew it was Liam before the door even opened. He stepped inside, his eyes running over my bare legs. "How are the burns?" "I'm okay, it's literally gone. I think it was more the shock," I said, my stomach fluttering with nerves when he shut and locked the door. "Good, the boiler is completely fine." "No idea what that was about," he sighed, running his fingers through his hair. "Don't worry about it," I said, standing up. Was he really going to spend the night? "Are you really going to sleep here?" "I told you yesterday I am." "Well, you didn't ask," I said, crossing my arms. Liam smirked, slowly pulling his shirt off and tossing it to the ground. My heart thudded staring at his body, with the way his muscles flexed at such a simple move. "Goddess!" Well, I'm asking now. Want me to stay, love? Chapter 42 Liam. I ran my eyes over her gorgeous eyes staring at me, that slender nose. She was beautiful. There was an innocence beyond that mischievous look of hers, one I was ready to destroy and show her exactly what she was missing out on. But I needed her to be ready for that. I walked towards her, waiting for her answer. I'm waiting, darling, I murmured, taking hold of her chin. Her breath hitched, her L.P.S. parting slightly as she stared into my eyes. If you want to, she said softly. I smirked. Is that a yes? I pushed. Yes. She poked her eyes out at me and I tugged her into my arms. Good, I murmured. Although I had covered her quickly, far too concerned, the glimpse she was going to be the death of me. She wrapped her arms around my neck, deepening the K.S.S., sensually running her tongue along my L.P.S. Liam, she whimpered, her cheeks flushing when I pushed her up against the wall. Sing her harder. Raven, I whispered, giving her a moment to breathe before I began sing her neck hungrily. Her heart was thundering, the addictive, tantalizing scent of her arousal hit my nose, making me bite back a growl. My eyes blazed as I ran my fingers through her hair, yanking her head back and claiming her L.P.S. once more. Her nails dug into my back as she ssc'd me back with equal passion. This was heaven, this was all I wanted. If I could just ss her forever, I'd be happy. She m0aned loudly, her legs wrapped around my waist, struggling for a control I wouldn't give. Goddess! She m0aned, breaking away from my L.P.S. and gasping for air. Raven, can you stop? Stop what? I'm not even doing anything. She frowned, despite the fact that her heart was still racing and her chest was heaving. That's always been the case, Raven never realized what she did. Exactly that, love. I whispered, satisfied when she whimpered, her heartbeat thudding even louder. Smirking, I moved back and lay down, placing one hand under my head. Giving her a moment to recover as I tried to control my own raging emotions. Liam, when did you get this tattoo? She asked after a moment, placing a hand on my chest. A few months after I left, I replied, trying to ignore the sparks. Does the raven represent me? She asked softly. I see 0cked a brow. I knew you were never a bright student, love, but isn't that a bit obvious? I remarked. She glared at me, smacking my arm, hard. What was that for? For being a mean jerk. I wasn't that bad at studies, I just didn't bother, exactly. He smirked. She rolled her eyes. Well, we can't always be an A-star Westwood kid, she said, batting her lashes before laughing. School. I remember how all the girls would be googly-eyed over you, but you never paid them attention. Because my eyes were on someone else. I loved how the blush coated her cheeks. The things she did to me. I didn't get how I could love someone so deeply, wanting to respect them and care for them, yet at the same time, I kept thinking explicitly about her and all the dirty things I wanted to do to her. Guess it goes hand in hand, right? Eyes up here, blue eyes. She said, and I realized I was staring. Have I ever told you that I love you? And that I want to ss every inch of them before I devour you? She blushed, getting all nervous again, pressing her legs together and tugging on her nightshirt, only resulting in straining it against her BS. Yeah, love, I love that too, carry on. I always found them kind of chunky compared to the rest of me. she said, unable to look into my eyes. She sure was amusing, perfect legs to have wrapped around me, I remarked. She bit her lip, trying to not let it get to her, and failing as she sighed softly. She slowly looked up and stared at me. Liam. There's something I need to tell you. Go for it, I said, not stopping my teasing until she swatted my hand away. This is serious. She pouted. Go on. She took a deep breath, making me frown in concern. What was it? A year after the blood moon, remember you said you got drunk and you ended up kissing a girl, thinking it was me. A flash of guilt rushed through me, and I clenched my jaw, feeling terrible. Yet, where was this going? She tilted her head, looking at me, with a sad look in her eyes. It was me. You kissed me that night, she whispered, making my eyes fly open in shock. What? I tilted my head, sitting up slowly. 100 thoughts were rushing through my mind. That made sense, it wasn't just the drugs messing with me, it had actually been Raven. Why were you there? I asked, staring into her alluring eyes. Auntie had some pack work to attend to, so I went, but the blood moon was always a painful reminder of that night, so I got away and got drunk. She whispered. Thank the goddess, I murmured, pulling her into my arms, feeling a huge weight lifted off of me. I didn't betray her. She curled into my lap, her hand on my heart as she tilted her head up to look at me. Liam, why did you just leave, if you cared so much? I thought. If I stayed, I'd just cause more issues. I thought you didn't want to talk, so maybe if I was gone, you two would get it over with and mate. When I learned you left, I was tempted to try again, but my ego and anger were stronger. So I refused, instead focusing on my training. I said quietly. She looked up at me, her eyes saddening. I wouldn't be complete without you, Liam, she said softly, her eyes strong with emotions. And Damon. She fell silent, confusion riddling her. My heart clenched. Just when I was about to feel like I wasn't enough, she looked at me with sadness and longing in her eyes. You are and always will be my first love, she whispered, a single tear trickling down her cheek. I could sense her confusion and turmoil. I guess it must be hard having a pull towards two people. Selene really must hate us to put us through this. Why couldn't have been simple? And you are mine, I whispered, enclosing her in my arms tightly and burying my head in her neck. In a perfect world, we could have been together and happy without any extra baggage. But we all know this world of ours is far from perfect. Chapter 43. Raven. It was the following day, and the conversation with Liam remained at the front of my mind. It almost felt like a cloud of doom looming over my head. I could tell that sharing me wasn't an option for him. Even though he was trying to at least tolerate Damon, it was obvious that there was no aspect of making it work. What did that mean? Damon's kindness, patience, and selflessness were things I loved too. He was someone who was dear to me with or without this bond. But ultimately, if I had to really choose one to have a relationship with, a sudden wave of guilt washed over me and I pushed the thoughts away. In sets, I shouted, trying to focus on the training session. Everyone obeyed except Taylor, who seemed to be distracted. Taylor, I called through the link. He blinked and looked at me. Sorry, he muttered, stepping up beside the guy next to him, ready to spar. Everything okay? Yeah, he replied, giving me a small smile that did nothing to hide his pain. I knew this was Zach's fault. I frowned, thinking how could I help them? Should I talk to Zack? He was still above me in rank, so I wasn't sure how this would go, but I would do it. I had run into Robin earlier too, when we were both heading out here, and she said she'd check the text out later too. Why don't you spar? Owen remarked. Or are you saving your energy for something else? Excuse me. I said, frowning. He gave me a C0CKY smirk. We all know about you and the Alpha. Owen cut it out. She is our trainer. Taylor growled. I saw Robin frowning as she stared at me too. Whether or not she spends the night with the Alpha is none of your business, man. Another of the men growled. You know, if you keep this up, Owen, you will be punished. I said, trying to ignore the whispers that were crossing through the group. Or you could call the Alpha. Owen added mockingly. Respect, Owen. I growled. My eyes flashed and I clenched my jaw, trying to calm my anger. Respect is earned, not given. He taunted. Did you really get this position fairly or? A few men snickered. I knew exactly what they were insinuating. Hey! Taylor growled. Shut up, loser! Owen shot back contemptuously. I know respect is earned and right now you don't deserve any. Now I think it's high time I show you how to overpower someone bigger than you. Owen, care to step over here? I said, ignoring his remarks. He scoffed and walked to the front. Raven. He's strong. And fast, Taylor said through the link. I don't care, I replied coldly. I didn't get here for no reason. It seems some of you think me being your trainer is a joke, or that my personal life somehow has anything to do with you all. I said coldly, glaring at the few men who had snickered along with Owen. I'll show you exactly how I got this position. Owen and I circled each other. I really wanted to knock that C0CKY smirk off his face. I motioned for him to come at me, my eyes flashing. Before he had even made 2 steps towards me, I spun around, slamming my palm flat in his chest. He staggered back, startled. What the? You said to come at me, and you did, just too slow. I said, aiming hit after hit. The Blood Moon Pack women were not weak. We would never be weak, and we would never let anyone think so. A legacy that I promise would continue no matter what. This pack stands for so much more than you think. Alpha Elijah and Luna Scarlet took this pack to new heights. They have a reputation that is known throughout the entire country. Yet there are people like you who mock that reputation. I said, spinning around and kicking him in the ribs. I felt something crack. The jarring pain of impact sent a shooting spasm up my knee. But right now, I didn't care about that pain. Alpha Elijah has always stood for respecting others and treating everyone equally, yet we are still tarnishing our pack's reputation. I blocked his every attack. I got this position through my hard work. There was no way someone like Owen could defeat me, and with each hit of mine that connected, he was getting angrier and more frustrated, making his attacks sloppier. You want me to show you how I got this position? I asked, as she grabbed my top. That was something everyone went for. I slipped out of it in a flash. The perks of oversized tops, I guess. I wrapped it around his hands, yanking him forward and aiming a kick to the side of his head. Spinning around, I kicked him in the back, wrapping my legs around his neck just as I slammed him face forward, straight into the ground. Everyone flinched, knowing if I didn't break his fall with my legs, he would have had his neck broken. This is how I got my position, proving that I'm capable. I said coldly. I have tolerated enough crap from everyone. From here on forth, if I get any attitude or disrespect, you will be punished. Now I want everyone to run 30 laps around the entire perimeter of the pack grounds. As for you, I crouched down next to Owen, who spat some blood out as he tried to get to his feet. 50 laps. I finished. Now. I said icily. He had a few broken bones, but they'd heal, just like my knee. Everyone was silent, but I could see a few smirks on some faces as they looked at Owen. I pulled my hair tie out, as half my hair had come out, and was readying it when Zack came over. Everything okay? He trailed off, seeing the team running off. Taylor called you. I said, raising an eyebrow. Yeah. He said you were being given a hard time. Zack said, running his fingers through his hair. And why do you care? I retorted. He raised an eyebrow. Have I done something to upset you? Yes. I hissed, looking around. You're hurting Taylor, I added through the link. He sighed, looking away. You don't understand, Raven. Then make me understand, I cried back in frustration. An outburst. Don't get into my business, he growled. Then stop hurting one of the sweetest men I have ever come across. Me accepting him would hurt him way more. Oh, I highly doubt that, I shouted back, frustrated. It sure would, because I've been in a relationship with his brother's mate, Zack snapped, his eyes blazing grey. Chapter 44. Zack. I glared at her. Goddess. She was so stubborn. That got her to shut up. She blinked at me as if I had just spoken a foreign language. Taylor's sister-in-law? She's like 33, she looked confused. Don't I know it? I was just a few months younger than Raven, I knew she was doing the math. But she's been mated for like 12 years, she replied. I could hear the realization settle into her voice. Guilt flitted through me as she turned her blazing eyes on me. Look, I'm not proud of it, but it happened just before I found out he was my mate. I was 18 and an older woman hitting on you. It wasn't that hard to fall for it. It was just S***X. I sighed in frustration. So just, stay out of it. No. I don't get it. She cheated on her mate? Goddess. Her mate is such a good person too. Channing has always been so nice, he was injured. Although Kiera was able to save his life, there wasn't much she could do about something that had been completely destroyed. Yet, he lost his legs in the Battle of Hecate's betrayal, so his mate she suddenly slapped me across the face, leaving a stinging pain behind. So, you became her WH0RE. I hate people who cheat on their mates. And I hate when those they cheat with know they have a partner, she growled. I know. She was just hot. Men really do stick. She stood there, her L.P.S. pursed, fists clenched, and I knew if someone saw us, they'd be confused as to what we were doing standing here silently glaring at each other. I ended it when I found my mate. When I told her that we were done, she got angry and said she'd tell my mate and the pack I assaulted her. I wouldn't have cared if it was anyone else, but the fact that she's Taylor's brother's mate could have destroyed him. I don't know. His family would never have accepted me. She stared at me as if I had grown 2 heads, but she had visibly calmed down a little. I thought you didn't want to admit you're gay, she mumbled sheepishly. I see 0cked a brow. I've known I'm bi for years and I have no issue with that, I glared at her. Don't be so nosy. Hey, I'm not nosy. If I was nosy, I would have peeped around the tree that night to see what you two were doing, she protested, blushing. I felt my cheeks burn and she grinned in triumph. Look, Zack, you can't let that stop you from coming clean to Taylor. You're hurting him more by not telling him. He probably feels like he isn't enough, she said softly. Taylor's brother is like his hero. If I told him, I don't know what he'd think of me. You won't know until you do, Zach. Continuing on like this isn't helping anyone either, I know. Now you know my issue. So why don't you tell me what crap's going on between you, Liam and Damon? It was only fair, she shared. She looked down, before looking up at me after a moment. They are both mated to me, she said quietly. I almost gasped like a woman. Whoa! Mated to you, or each other too? Me, she said, glaring at me, blushing again. Where's your mind going? I narrowed my eyes at her. Nowhere, kid. She shot back, huffing. I see zero cked a brow. Whatever, midget. You didn't just call me that. I think I just did. I replied. She glared at me before staring at her hands. You know, Zach, don't make the same mistake I did. You never know what might be if you give it a shot, rather than living unhappily with a what if he rejects me. Her words were true. I was scared of him rejecting me, or me hurting him. Her situation was more than mine, and if I kept this up, I might just lose my mate to someone else before even giving it a shot. Maybe I did need to talk to Taylor about this. It was evening and I had actually taken the plunge and asked Taylor to meet me outside the pack grounds. Tonight was my night off, and I thought if we were going to talk, we needed to do it away from the pack. Maybe I was reckless and jumped the gun, but apart from Raven's slap, she hadn't acted as appalled as I thought she might. It was getting hard without Taylor, but the fear of rejection overrode that need. I strummed my fingers on the steering wheel until I saw him walk out in his puffer jacket, fitted jeans that hugged those legs perfectly, and those gorgeous eyes. He was hot. He opened the door, getting in, and I swallowed, keeping my gaze ahead. Hey, Zach. Even the way he said my name was a turn-on in itself. Hey, Tay. Our eyes met, and when he looked at my I'd them, looking away quickly. We needed to talk. 20 minutes later, I parked up outside a restaurant and Taylor C0cked a brow. Never knew this was a date, he said, smiling. It's not a date, I replied, frowning. I doubt he'll stick around when he knows my truth. We entered and I gave my name, having made a reservation in one of the private rooms. Taylor whistled. You sure this isn't a date? Yeah, I'm sure, I said, frowning. Someone's pretty uptight. You need to loosen up, he whispered, his hot breath brushing my ear. You'll be the one loosening up, not me, I shot back, smirking when I saw his neck redden. Yeah, thought so. The waitress showed us to our room and gave us both a smile. I'll leave you with the menu and I'll bring. Just give us 2 of your premium grill share platters and make sure the meat is well done, I said. And 2 bottles of Coke, the waitress nodded and left us to it. At least you could have asked me what I wanted, Taylor said when we both sat down. I see zero cked a brow. You would have ordered exactly that, I said, stretching my arm across the back of the booth. He smiled and nodded. Yeah, true. Our eyes met, and that same tension between us settled in again. I looked away. I needed to tell him. Tay. There's a reason I brought you here. His eyes softened and worry filled them. It seemed too good to be true, he muttered, looking away. I didn't mean it like that. Reaching over, I took his hand in mine, not missing the way his heart raced or the tingles that coursed through me at our contact. After I tell you, you may not even want to see my face again, I said quietly. He gave me that smile that made my heart feel funny and shook his head. I don't think anything you do could ever make me not want to see you again. He replied softly. I don't deserve you, Tae. I blew out a breath. All right, I was ready to tell him. Chapter 45. Taylor. My heart was racing as I stared over at my mate, in his leather jacket, fitted shirt, and that pout that's always set on his face. Goddess, I'd let him do me all the time. Just the thought was turning me on, but the worry and guilt in his eyes had me on edge. When the waitress returned, Zach retracted his hands, much to my disappointment. She left us with our drinks and food, closing the door behind her. Soft music was playing in the background, and I honestly could have just pretended we were on a surprise date if it wasn't for how apprehensive Zach was acting. Zach, what is it? When I was 18, I kind of got into a relationship with this she-wolf. But when I met you, I wanted to break it off. The thing is, he ran his hand through his messy hair, his heart thudding. I knew Zach's had a few relationships, but I also knew our connection was strong. Zach, why are you nervous? She was mated, all right? She had a mate and I still let it happen. He said, the guilt on his face tugging at my heart. That didn't sit right with me, but he was young when it happened. Zach, you were 18. It's okay. We make mistakes, I don't think any less of you. I'm not done yet. He said quietly. I frowned, waiting, watching him fight the conflict of whatever was bothering him. Her mate was injured in the Battle of Hecate's betrayal. His pain was so strong that my stomach twisted. What was it? I get that it was really messed up, but it was Anna, Channing's mate. His words hit me like a kick in the gut. My stomach somersaulted, and not in a good way. The pain I was feeling was so strong. Guilt, anger, sadness, betrayal, anguish. Of all people, why his mate? Channing. Channing who? Do you want to know how Channing was hurt, Zach? How he got into the state he's in, just so his future Delta could screw his mate? I asked hoarsely. Zach looked up at me, his eyes pained. He saved my life. If it wasn't for Channing sacrificing himself, I wouldn't be here today. I said, standing up. He had been right. After hearing this, I couldn't look at him. Tae, I'm sorry. He said, those gorgeous hazel eyes of his full of regret. I shook my head, unable to look him in the eye. It was crushing, damn it, this hurt. Tae. He grabbed my arm when I reached the door, those sparks coursing through us both. Our hearts raced, but I couldn't do this, not right now. Let go of me, Zach. I said, shoving him off. Even that hurt. I left the room, just needing some space. Taylor. The moment I was out of sight and out of that place that had suddenly felt too small, I shifted, not caring that I left behind my phone or anything. I broke into a run, rushing into the woods. I howled into the darkness, wanting to get rid of that crushing pain in my chest. It felt like I was suffocating. All I could think of was Channing, the man who had destroyed his life for me, had been betrayed by my mate. I had already felt guilty for that night, but now I couldn't stop the tears from streaming down my face. It hurt so bad. I'm sorry, Channing, I should have died that night. You should have let me die. Whimpering, I curled up, wanting the pain to go away, but it didn't. Why didn't it? After a short while, I felt someone pushing through the link. Taylor. Where are you? Please be okay, Raven's voice came through the link. I'm okay Raven, I said, trying to sound normal. No babe, you're not. Please tell me. I'm so sorry, she whispered, and I could tell she was near tears. Why are you sorry? What had Zack told her and why? Please tell me where you are, she pleaded. She was stubborn, and I had no energy to argue. I'm just outside the pack walls, down by rocky edge near the river, I said. Do not tell anyone else where I am or I will run. I could use someone to talk to, and she knew he was my mate. I won't, I'm coming, she whispered. All I could think about was Channing's smile. Despite the fact that he was in a wheelchair, he still tried to remain positive. For a werewolf, a life like that, it was awful. I don't know how much time passed, but it wasn't that long before I saw Raven's dark and light grey wolf come running, her two unique colored eyes glowing as she dropped a bundle of clothes next to me and nuzzled my head. I'm so sorry, Taylor, I told Zack to tell you, this is my fault, she whispered tearfully. Don't blame yourself, guess it was better he told me sooner than later, I mumbled back. She nudged my wolf, settling down next to me and staring into my eyes. I could see the guilt she was feeling, but I looked away, burying my head in my paws. I heard her shift back, grabbing the oversized hoodie and pulling it on. She sat next to me, pulling my head into her lap, hugging me tightly. She didn't ask me anything, and I was grateful. I wondered what happened between her and Zack, what he had told her, but right now I didn't want to think about him. All I could think of was the fact that my mate had messed around with my brother's mate, and it was all my fault. After a good while, when the moon was up and it was very quiet, the steady sound of the rushing river was like a blissful song, she spoke. Do you want to talk about it? Her fresh floral scent was calming. I could probably stay here for a lot longer, but I did not want anyone like the Alpha coming for my head. Although that didn't sound bad right now, Channing had risked his life for me, so I wouldn't do myself harm. No, I said quietly. Let's go home. She stood up and shifted into a wolf before we both trudged back towards the pack grounds. Zack is worried about you. He does care for you. He feels so guilty, he didn't want to hurt you. He hurt me the moment he agreed to that relationship, I said, my voice harsher than it was meant to be. I know. I know how bad decisions can result in something worse, she said softly. Don't be sorry, Raven, I'm glad it's come out. We were almost to the pack house when I stopped. I have somewhere to go. Where are you going? She asked. I want to visit Channing. Are you going to tell him? She asked worriedly. I honestly don't know, I replied, that crushing guilt was consuming me once more. She looked worried, but after giving me a gentle nuzzle, she headed towards the pack house entrance. Take care, Taylor, don't be so hard on yourself. Thanks for tonight, I simply said before I turned away. Or if you want to pay for more such audiobooks, you can send us a request in a private Facebook group, or join us on WhatsApp, a link is given in the video description. The rest of the audiobooks will be uploaded in the next episode. Join us on Patreon to listen to more unlimited audiobooks.